Well, the whole world's going a little bit crazy, and we're all afraid of terrorism. Let's talk about it. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the beginning of the last days. My name is Laura-Lynn Thompson, and if you're paying attention to all that's going on right now, it's just pretty crazy. And we all need to find a place and a way to actually get through all of that. I want to tell you how I get through, because I get really cool things sent to me by y'all. So I just want to thank someone who did a beautiful painting of this lady, and she has got a gorgeous, she's holding on to a chain with a cross here, and she's saying a prayer. And so this lady said that she painted it so that I would know that people are praying for me, and I do appreciate that. And also she painted this, which is sort of the storm. Can you see that, JT? Am I holding it up the right way? And that there's a storm going on, and we're all in the middle of battling it. And I appreciate that you did that. It's absolutely beautiful. So we're going to find a really special place to hang these beautiful pictures. And I thank you for your note that you sent as well. Many of you just support us, and I appreciate that so much. Are you having a little bit of a difficulty, JT, because you're stressing me out? There's a lot of movement going on in the back here. So you know what I love to do is I love to read from my dad's Bible at the start of every show. And today let's just do it together. I'm going to kind of just open and see. Oh, that's not really to do with peace or anything. Do you know what? I like Proverbs. Here, let's see. Okay, I like this one. All right, so this is in Malachi 3. My dad has underlined so many things. He studies it. And because of what we're talking about, I thought about how important it is that we need to have a steady mind, and that, God is a rock, and he protects us and he keeps us in times of trouble. So in Malachi 3, verse 16, it says, "Then they that feared the Lord spake often one to another, and the Lord hearkened, and he heard it. And a book of remembrance was written before him for them that feared the Lord, and that thought upon his name." I don't know what's more important right now than thinking and keeping your thoughts upon God. We've seen what just took place in Moscow. That's really scary. ISIS is claiming that it is their responsibility. We see the Ukraine war. We see a lot of people dying. We see what's going on in the Middle East. It's terrifying. I'm personally upset at the United States of America not standing with Israel more strongly, because they decided that they would basically not do a vote in the latest United Nations vote about trying to get Israel forced, and I don't really know how they'd force Israel to do anything, frankly, but into a ceasefire. And I will just say that when I think about what those people went through on October 7th, I don't know how you have peace with those who hate Israel, who hate Jews. We've shown the videos of teaching children to have hate in their heart from a very young age. And this entire area is embroiled in a very difficult situation. But until we deal with terrorism, and until we deal with those who don't think it's a big deal and make it a way of life, and until we eradicate them, how do we protect the world? And how do we protect the innocent? It's a very difficult topic. But I have a guest today who's quite an expert in these areas, Dr. Carole Lieberman. She is an MD, and she has a master's in public health, internationally renowned as the terrorist therapist. And I think we all need one. She's a board-certified Beverly Hills psychiatrist, 3-time Emmy-honored television personality, a radio talk show host, a best-selling author and professional speaker. Since 9/11, recognizing that what the world needs most is help coping with the ultimate monster under the bed, that is terrorism. Dr. Carole has devoted herself to encouraging people to break through their denial and giving them the psychological tools that they need to survive. Thank you very much, Dr. Carole, for waiting in the wings. We're so glad that you're here, and we feel that we do need a terrorist therapist. And I have personally said so many times, I think we're in trauma. I think we've been traumatized by everything that we've seen happen in actually several decades, but really increasing in the last 4 years. And then recently, this last year has been quite something. So what can you tell us? I know that you sort of have a specialty in dealing in New York, and I'm wearing my New York shirt for you today, Dr. Carole. So I want, maybe you can help us with all of that and tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I'm a psychiatrist, and when 9/11 happened, since I was born and bred in New York City, I asked myself, what can I do to help people cope with terrorism? Because I realized, I'm not a psychic, but I realized that this was going to be, by this I mean terrorism and terror attacks, is going to be the most destructive, the most worst thing in our lives. And so, I thought, well, I already had written several books. So I thought, okay, I can write, I would do television, I'm a psychiatrist. So I tried to put it all together and became the terrorist therapist. And so I've been helping people from in America, of course, and especially in New York, but in France after their, terror attacks. And of course, the terror attacks from 2015 of the Bataclan and the other, the cafes and so on. The Bataclan in particular very much reminds me of what's happening or what happened in Moscow, in the concert hall. The Bataclan is a little smaller, but still it's the same kind of shooting, shooting fish in a barrel. And then I do a podcast, the Terrorist Therapist Show. And I've written 2 books, and one of them is for kids. It's called Lions and Tigers and Terrorists, Oh My, How to Protect Your Child in a Time of Terror. So the whole point of all this is I have been saying actually since 9/11, trying to warn people on my podcast and so on, terrorists, they are not done. It's not 9/11 and done, or even in England, it was 7/7. That was their 9/11 in 2005. Those were the big attacks, but they are not done. Terrorists have planned for over 1,000 years to have global jihad, global warfare, to take over the world. And that is what we are seeing. And it is getting worse.
Yeah, it really is. And you're absolutely right. We've seen such an increase in all of these things, and it's quite epic. And for me personally, people are starting to say, we abide by the Bible, and that these are biblical times, and it looks like we're setting up for, quite a disaster. But when you think about New York, I wonder if this is just so political. Do you think this has to do with the upcoming election in the United States?
Well, which aspect? Are you talking about the subways and the
increase? Yes, yeah.
Yeah, well, political in the sense that, there's some controversy about bringing in more police and the National Guard to the New York subways. But I think it's a necessary thing. Nobody, it's funny, since 9/11, and as the years have passed, the only time that people remember terrorism is when they go to the airport and they have to go through TSA, and it's like, oh yes, right, there's terrorism in the world. People are in America are very much in denial about the terrorist plans, about how the attacks are going to continue. So I think it's very important in the subways. The subways, before even the fear of terrorism lately, just the subways in themselves, the crime has gotten worse and worse. And it's very sad for me as someone who was born and raised there to see how New York is being destroyed. And, also the number of migrants that have come to New York, that is just making the whole situation much worse. And of course, but the controversy is that some people are saying that it's it's intruding on your rights, in your privacy, that the guards are going to only look at certain people, they're going to make racial distinctions and all that. I if you look at this, and that guy doesn't look like they're making a racial distinction. He actually doesn't. Not that terrorists come in all shapes and sizes, but so yes, I think it's very good. I'm not sure if you mean politics as far as the White House, the presidential election.
Yeah, I mean, we're watching that a whole defund the police movement has kind of taken place in many places, which has been crazy. Yes. It's such a, like, who wants less? What's controversial really about having more security in some of your, we did ride the subway when we were there, and we've kind of said now, after a few things we've heard, we don't know if we'd be able to do it again. But if the National Guard there, that seems a good thing.
Yes, I haven't ridden the subway in years. I mean, granted, I moved from New York to California, but even when I go back, like, I never even think about using the subway. When I was a little kid, I used to go I lived in Queens, and I used to go from my home to Manhattan to the library, the 42nd Street Library, all the time. And, didn't think twice about crime or what was going to happen. And I mean, there was not that things weren't happening to some degree then, but there wasn't this fear of the subways.
Yes, and I was a little bit afraid when we went. It was actually 10 years ago, really now. It was 10 years ago, I think. And I was a little bit afraid anyways, but we didn't have a car and we were trying to figure out how to get everywhere. So I hear what you're saying. So when you're dealing with this, like actually thinking through terrorism, what is your best advice then on how we have peace in our heart, how we continue to maintain a joy in our lives when these things are becoming so obvious and right in our faces and so scary?
Yes, that's a good question. Well, one way how a lot of people are doing it is by denial, telling themselves that we don't have to worry about terrorists. Of course, that's not really the healthy way. I mean, not that you should be thinking about terrorism all the time and hiding in your bed, but it really, on the positive side, it really should encourage people, first of all, to try to suck more out of every day. Get more living, do more living in every day, because there is the risk, of that you may not be living quite as long as you thought. You may not get to 100, and if you exercise. That's one thing. Also, of course, when I wrote my book about the lions and tigers and terrorists, oh my, it was for kids. Half of the book is a picture book for kids about terrorism, and then the other half is for their parents and teachers and so on. And it was to teach parents to make their nests, the home, a more secure place. So I think that that's a big part of it, to make where we live, where we go in our life, whether it's to the office or certainly at home, or we need to be trying to look out for people more and embracing them more and be nicer, kinder to them more. That's number one, to create a sense of security, like we're like the policemen or the National Guard in the subway. We need to create that in our own lives for our friends and our family. And of course, we also need, this is super important, we also need to make sure, especially since the election is coming, to make sure that we elect people who, first of all, recognize the danger of terrorism, and second of all, want to do something about it. Now, Biden, I mean, part of the reason why terrorists are in our midst and at our doorstep and crossing over into our midst is because of how Biden handled Afghanistan. the absolute fiasco that he made of leaving Afghanistan, and and that not only was it bad in terms of the people who were killed, Americans troops who were killed, and other people who were killed in that whole craziness, the chaos that ensued, but that made it a lot easier now. Since then, terrorists have been able to build up because there aren't American troops there, and they've been able to make their plans. Like the Moscow concert. I mean, I don't know for sure. No one does yet whether those people came from Afghanistan. Although it is thought that it's the ISIS-K branch that was involved in the concert attack
Right.
in Moscow, and that would be the branch that was in Afghanistan. So it's also, but it's not just that. It's that when he made that mess in Afghanistan, countries, our enemies around the world, saw that we don't really have a leader. And this is the time to take what you want. That was right after that. That's when Russia invaded Ukraine. Now there's, of course, this horrendous situation in the Middle East. And so, people it's kind of like a free for all. Okay, the United States doesn't know what it's doing. There's nobody running the store. And we're going to just do what we want. And of course, that's really the whole situation is very terrifying. So, we're not helpless. I mean, it's hard not to feel helpless with all these things, but we're not. And it starts with electing the people who we think will be able to better protect us from terrorism. And of course, Trump killed ISIS or destroyed ISIS in the caliphate. In the Middle East, and so and he recognizes that this is the number one threat. Well, there are so many threats. Iran is a threat, Russia is a threat, but I think people need to wake up to just how serious a threat and what the terrorists plan to do. I've been saying this, quite frankly, on my podcast for years about how all these different things that we're pointing towards what's happening now, but I also talk about Europe. If we don't get to see what's happening in Europe, I mean, the American mainstream media doesn't show the realities of what's happening in Europe. But the migrants in Europe, from radical Islamist countries, have basically taken over Europe, especially in England. London is really barely hanging in there because they've terrified the MPs in Parliament. They were just recently, you may have heard about how these protest groups, the radical Islamist, pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas protest groups, they just recently put on the flashed, onto Parliament, onto Big Ben, from the river to the sea, and they did this they timed it at a time when Parliament was voting on whether they were going to ask for a ceasefire in Israel or not. And so they were trying to intimidate the MPs, and they were trying to intimidate them in real life too. I mean, like up close and personal. And so it turned out that the MPs didn't vote. I mean, that's what you mentioned about the UN. It's kind of similar but in London, it was because the MPs were afraid of being attacked and killed personally themselves if they voted on the side of Israel.
I'm so glad to hear you speaking about all of this, because it's just absolutely become such a reality that most people, first of all, if you live over here in North America, you might not understand how terrorizing it is to be living right next door to people who will rape, burn your family alive, come in after you, which is what Israel's been living with for a very, very long time. And so I don't know that we're very sympathetic to the problems that arise when a war hits. And as we're watching all of this, I think that we need to understand that what way is there where we can deal with these radicals, these Hamas and Hezbollah terrorists? How can we deal with them unless we seek them out, hunt them down, and have got to have like a war to end all wars to put them out of commission? you know, and people don't seem to have the stomach to understand if you don't get them, they will do this again. And now I'm concerned that they've come to North America because they're in our streets chanting from the river to the sea. And you talk about
Yes.
London. Also in Germany, when I had Christine Anderson on the show, she says that machete attacks are a regular occurrence. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody's putting out the statistics into the mainstream media, but it's these Islamic radicals who are doing machete attacks. Like, this is changing our world.
Yes. What people need to understand is the places that these people came from, they don't live like we live. You know, it's not civilized to the extent that America or even Europe is or was. And so these kinds of things are natural to them. Also, you know, another example is when we left Afghanistan, surrendered in Afghanistan, the United States took 80,000 Afghans and put them in planes and sent them to America. And they're all over America. And now the you know, what they said for why they were doing this was because these were Afghans who were good to the American troops. Well, somehow I don't think 80,000 of them were all good to the American troops. And they weren't able to vet them because it was such a mess when they left that they just, you know, people, if you got on the plane, you got on the plane. And there have already been cases, you won't hear about it in the mainstream media. I've had to dig for these things. Because they were used to like raping, you know, for example, raping women, raping children, all of that. That's sort of a natural part of their life. That has started to happen, and that some of them have been caught. And of course, you know, you would not hear this in your 5 o'clock news. But so that is the main problem. So when they live in different circumstances with different cultural values and so on, and then come here and or like you can see in Europe, you know, they don't really want to change. They don't really want to become like the French, for example, or become like the British. They want to do what they've been doing, but in that society, and collecting all the money to live there.
Well, and I'd just like to ask you as we close up here, but thank you so much for your incredible time. But you live in California, and we're watching as your governor is not maintaining your border. Is that a concern for the people of California now?
I don't know who is worse, the governor of California or the governor of New York. They are both, they're so naive, or they're so stuck to, you know, and one thing I just want to mention about, I was just trying to talk about Biden and Obama, that, and you had mentioned at the beginning about, you know, well, I thought you were going to be starting to go there. You know, this whole thing about, well, first of all, we know Obama is pulling the strings of Biden. Okay. And Obama is,
I believe
really,
that.
you know, he studied when he was a little boy, he was in madrasas. He was in Indonesia in madrasas. And when you learn these things, you know, madrasas is where terrorists learn how to be terrorists, from 4 years old. You know, they teach them to carry guns, and they start with Israel, teach them to hate Israel, to hate Jews and all of that. But they're also teaching them to hate all the unbelievers. So it's not just Jews, it's Christians,
Infidels,
it's anybody of any other religion. And so
even atheists.
That's right. That's
LGBTQ, you know?
Yes.
The Queers for
Yes.
Palestine, that gives us a good chuckle over here, because we're like, these people hate you guys. They will kill you if you go there.
Yes.
You know, like,
Yes,
what are you doing?
yes.
How very
ignorance.
odd, right? How ignorant. Yeah.
And so Obama, you know, when he learned these things as a little boy, he tries to say, oh, no, I didn't. I only went to a school like that for 2 years, now 4 years. I mean, that's when, whatever you learn, anybody from any kind of school, the things that you learn, the younger you are, those are the things that stick with you. They are in your core. And so really, I've said this for years about Obama. I mean, even before Biden got to be president. but he still has that hatred for Israel and for Jews in his heart, as he was taught as an early little boy. Um, and he's controlling Biden's strings. So it's no wonder that Biden is now saying, plus Biden wants to get elected, of course, and the groups that are pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas are saying, if you don't do this and that, make Israel have a ceasefire. If you don't do any of that, we're not going to vote for you. So, of course, that's part of it. But the thing is that, and there is some danger because of the arms that the weapons that America does sell to Israel. But I have confidence in Israel. I'm sure they've already gotten somebody else to buy them from. But in any case, it's very scary. I'm not going to say.
And we need them to be
scared.
strong. If they're not strong, if they're not successful, Hezbollah and Hamas need a wake-up call that they've got to stop living like this, and maybe the only way to deal with them is to take them out, and so that they are no longer breathing on our planet, because they're so dangerous. I don't see a way out. They don't want a two-state solution. And yes, Obama is behind all of this. And I'm so glad for you to bring that up, because people know he's still running the show. I mean, I don't know what he's running it terribly, because I am not really understanding why even your governor there in California, because he's got good hair, and a nice smile, like dumb as nails. But at least if he were the nominee for the Dems, you'd go, okay, well, it's going to be this crazy guy, but not the guy who can't find his way off a stage and who often thinks that people that have been dead for a couple years are, there in the room.
Still alive. I don't know what would be worse. I mean, Obama wants Biden to be president because he's able to still control him. The more demented he is, the easier it is for Obama to control Biden. But yes, that's the thing about it. I just want to say about the ceasefire. The longer there would be a ceasefire, the more Hamas and the neighboring countries, terrorists in the neighboring countries, can refuel. Can get more weapons, can rest, can do all these things to come back at Israel with even more force than October 7th. So there can't be a ceasefire. I mean, Israel is under a lot of pressure because the people who lost their family members, and of course you can understand that, are saying, oh, well, we want, give them anything as long as we can get our family members back. I mean, I don't know if that were my family member, I might be the same way. I'd like to think that I would put the country above that, but it's a very hard decision. I mean, put the country above your daughter. It's all very hard and all very unnecessary.
Well, people aren't signing up for the military anymore either, because it's become so woke. And so, the United States and Canada, we are in such a crisis, and we have terrible leaders. They're the Build Back Better buddies. Like our Trudeau is just like your Biden. And we're looking at what they're doing. They've just made terrible decisions. They're sacrificing the country on the altar of their egos. Basically, I guess they want to keep the Democrats in, or they want to keep the Liberals in Canada. And now these people that they're bringing in are turning against them because they're not calling for a ceasefire. Like, they're never happy. It's their way or the highway, And so what a disaster is kind of looming right now.
Well, and it has to stop in terms of there has to be more punishment. I mean, that's the real way to get rid of this. In addition to having more police and National Guard in the subways, which is great, but you have to punish the people who are having these protests and becoming violent. It's one thing, I mean, in America, we have the First Amendment, you can free speech and all of that good stuff, but that doesn't mean that you can be violent and you can try to kill a policeman, for example, or a bystander or counter protesters. There have been some situations here where the pro-Palestinians have attacked the pro-Israel people, which it's like, and the pro-Israel people are not violent. But so it's real. So these people need to be put in jail. They're committing a crime. Same thing with schools, colleges, the anti-Semitism. It's one thing to protest and free speech and all that, but the things that are going on college campuses are way over the line, and they need to be expelled.
Yes, they really do. And one final question that I have for you, as we look at all of this, you are obviously are an expert and you keep track of what's going on in different parts in the world. If Biden gets in 2024, however that could happen, I mean, for Pete's sake, he's very popular. He got more votes than Obama. But if he gets in, what might we be faced with? Because they're going to keep these borders a mess, and it's changing the face of our nation. And people do not believe in the Judeo Christian values that United States was founded on. Christians and Jews find a solace in that they believe in the God of Abraham, that he, had rules, and thou shalt not kill is a big one. But that's not shared by many of these that are now being allowed in. How does you lay to rest at night and you're looking at the ceiling as the terrorist therapist and you're going, our country, like we really do need Donald Trump to get in. Even if people don't like him, we need somebody who's going to be strong and deal with this.
Absolutely. And it's not like really anybody likes Biden. I mean, not anybody. I mean, some people like him, but people are realizing, I've been talking since he ran in 2020 about his dementia and all that, and telling people back then I was calling it encroaching dementia. Now it has encroached. There's no question. You don't have to be a psychiatrist to know that Biden has dementia. And we are, if through election malfunctioning, shall we say, through funny business, Biden could get in, even though all the polls, there are polls that show that the majority of people, even in his own party, recognize he has dementia. And yet some of those same people are going to vote for him. And they're not really voting for him. And some of them don't even know, or it's not necessarily because of they know that Obama is pulling the strings of Biden, but it's that they are voting against Trump. Some people are just feel intimidated by Trump. He's too confident. They who does he think he is, kind of thing. And he is the only hope our country has at this point. He's the only person who's strong enough to do anything, and of course they've been trying to tear him down in all different ways. But
Letitia James. Letitia
Yes.
James and different ones of these judges, I mean, they're not operating with any kind of fairness at all. And it's really good to see that the court agrees to block the collection of Trump's massive civil fraud judgment. He's going to just have to put up 1.75 million now. But many pundits are saying it's ridiculous he has to do any of this because there was no victim. They went after him because they say that he, overrated his property so that he could get, a big loan or whatever. But on his legal documents, it says, don't take our word for it. Go see our properties. Go check it out. You come up with your own amount. And everyone did, and they paid back the loan. And now they've gone after him for this. It's, people are saying it's destroying New York again because people who might like Trump, they don't want to put their money in New York because maybe they'll be the next victim of these radicals.
Yes, that's right. To invest money, that's right. Yes,
this is a new kind of terrorism, right? It's legal terrorism.
Yes, that's right.
It's going after people's money, their life. We have this in Canada. It's terrorism to say that we're not allowed to have free speech, that we're broadcasters like myself could potentially face imprisonment for life if we do hate speech, but they get to decide what hate speech is. So this is problematic because they all think we're hateful for no good reason.
Right. It's George Orwell all over again. Animal Farm and 1984 and all of that. It's, I remember reading those and thinking, and I love them, but never thinking that I'd be living through it. I mean, it's just, so when you look at the border is a very good example because everybody knows, I mean, it's easy to see that by basically opening the borders. They are bringing in people with diseases. They are bringing in people who are dependent now on our money. So like going to a hospital emergency room, wait your turn amongst a huge number of people who don't have insurance and who have all these problems. And I mean, it's in so many ways, it is just destroying the country. So clearly, I mean, it's not like this is a secret. Anybody can see this. And so clearly this is what Biden and Obama want, to destroy the country. Not that that really should have been such a big surprise. They've been trying to do it in more subtle ways for years now. And it is really, and of course, terrorists, they know now that, I mean, I've been saying this for a number of years already, that terrorists are coming across the border. But now that anybody can come across the border, it's even worse.
They're really coming. Is this scare? Are you seeing more fear in your practice? Like, you've been a therapist for a long time, helping people with all kinds of issues, family matters and personal issues. Is anxiety, do you see it as our world has changed the people's psyche?
Absolutely. Even when they come for sort of the normal problems, like, like marital problems, or the typical kind of, or bullying of their kids, or, the kinds of things that have been around forever. There's a heightened anxiety because there's also the anxiety that we're not safe in the world.
That is exactly right. That one sentence really speaks to what I've been saying a lot lately, is we don't feel safe anymore. We used to feel safe, and especially in Canada, even more than the United States. We felt safe. We had you can travel as a Canadian. We got that Canadian passport. We can get anywhere. Even Americans can't get some places we can get because we're just such a safe country. But we don't feel safe anymore. Part of the problem is we see that terrorists are actually, and terror cells are actually within our Canadian borders, and they are within the United States. I think we've had about I was reading a statistic that perhaps 3 million have entered Canada through these different ways and these people, they don't respect our way of life, actually. And I'm wondering why we did this. Why did we do this to our country? Why did we think that we had to take something that was working so well and not just really make it work, and not protect ourselves, and not accept people from places in the world that don't honor peace and are violent at times? Right. And then people that are radicals, we've left a completely open door. We don't know, who these people are and what they're capable of. And now the threat is so huge, and we don't feel safe anymore. And especially where you are, I mean, you've got a big job because you've got to be down there right in Hollywood, right close to the border down there in LA. And your governor is not protecting your state. That is so scary.
Our governor is so bad, and I don't know why there weren't enough votes to recall him when there was that opportunity a few years ago. I think, like we were talking about before the show started, that Governor Newsom of California and Trudeau of Canada are similar. Both of them have gotten through life on their looks.
They have good hair.
and they're empty. They really don't have a clue.
Bubbleheads.
And except for that, they're in the World Economic Forum, and they are trying to make their countries go along with that idea that nobody will own anything, and the government will be totally in charge, and all of that. I mean, it's just really scary.
Wow. Tell us where people can follow you the best, Dr. Carole, because you're absolutely delightful, and you know what you're talking about, and you know how to help people. So where can best people follow you?
Sure. Well, I rant every day on Twitter. That's my first stop.
That's good.
Like I start in the morning. I read, these newspapers. I start with the New York Post, which is why I was saying that, I look at these pictures of what's happening in New York, and it just really makes me so sad. And then I go to the Daily Mail, the UK's Daily Mail, because they talk about some things that you won't hear about in America. And then I go to Breitbart to hear the truth.
Excellent.
But whatever makes me the most angry after I do my little search, I then pick something out and I tweet about it. So my what do you call that? My label, my
Your handle.
how you can reach me.
Your
What is
handle.
it?
Yep,
And
your
my
handle.
Thank you.
Right,
My
Dr.
handle
Carole,
on Twitter,
MD. Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you. And it's Dr.
Right there.
DRCAROLE. Well, you have it up there.
Yep.
MD, right.
Yep.
And then also, of course, terroristtherapist.com.
terroristtherapist.com. I just thank you so much. And, you know, in a world where this is actually what we need, thank you for writing a book that helps children. You always know that someone's a good person as long as they're writing children's books that are not sick, because that's another whole issue of what they're doing.
Yes.
So if parents want, if parents want a safe book for their kids and to help their kids to feel safe, you know, you've written that book. And so we just appreciate so much your heart for the world. And thank you for bringing healing, emotional healing, to many, many people, and especially those in California. We'll look you up when we're down there sometime. It'd be nice to take you out for lunch, Dr. Carole. I'd love that.
You.
All right. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
She is very lovely, and it's not an easy time to be somebody who's trying to calm down everybody. It's almost like it's a constant traumatic experience to watch what's going on. And you can hear how she's staying in touch with, you know, different parts of the world and what's happening. And then your job, imagine that your job is to convey to others how to be at peace and how to have hope and how to not be filled with anxiety, you know? And so I appreciate that. It's funny because last night I couldn't sleep as easily as you know, some other nights. So of course, what I do is I get my Bible Gateway, and I was listening to the story of David. And in Samuel, I could listen to Samuel over and over again. And in fact, I started it. And I've told you guys that I put on the, you know, it has a little speaker. You push the speaker, and I put in Samuel 1 into BibleGateway.com, and it reads aloud. And it has music behind it sometimes. So I just listen to the stories because Samuel is so amazing. You want to talk about terror. I mean, they just literally just kill people all the time. That's what they did. And of course, it goes back to the Middle East. I mean, the whole culture over there has definitely, it's been a lot of killing. And so you read about the fights that were going on between the Philistines, you know, and the Amalekites and the parasites, you know, all kinds of stuff was happening, and real wars. I mean, just like, and they didn't have guns, thank God. You didn't have to worry about being shot from a distance, but you had to worry that whoever got close to you was going to have a sword and might knife you and would very easily take your life. And they were after the priests, and they were after David, and David literally was hunted by Saul, the king of Israel. He was so jealous of David that he was constantly trying to kill him. And of course, this was a spiritual battle. And last night, the scripture that my Bible Gateway was reading to me, and of course, I have a long set of earphones that I listen, so my husband doesn't get all annoyed and, you know, kept up all night while I'm listening, because sometimes I used to listen to it out loud, and then he's like, do you have earphones? So I got those, and so all is well. And as I'm listening, it's the part about where Saul is really upset. He knows that the favor of God had left him. And this is a serious thing. When the favor of God leaves a country, how is God to bless the United States and Canada turning their backs on Israel? Yet another thing. Oh, we abort more babies, you know, than you know, other countries. And Biden is pro abortion. We've got Justin Trudeau, pro abortion. So the most vulnerable people in society, God makes little people. And we are in countries that will not protect them. Some states want to have the right to kill a child after birth. I mean, it boggles the mind. But now we're in these countries that are not standing with Israel. Now, don't be surprised by that, because Ezekiel 38 and 39 say that the entire world's going to turn against Israel. That's why I've had to laugh at these people who send me emails. They send me emails saying, what are you doing? You're supporting Israel. Oh, so now you're basically, you're on the same side as Trudeau and on the same side as Biden, right? And I take time to write them back and go, when Biden and Trudeau are fully against Israel, then are you going to use this same, argument that I shouldn't be supporting Israel? I don't support terrorism, and I also don't support false narratives of Israel's their rise. I don't. And on this show, actually, tomorrow, we are going to have somebody who's going to talk about Israel and is going to share the truth on that. And we've got to get more discernment and also education and research done, because the liars and the cheats and those who want to deceive the world, they are putting their stuff out. The thing that I hear all the time, oh, Israel created Hamas. I said to that person, unless you can produce one shred of evidence about that, do not write me back. Don't send me a video that somebody said it. Don't send me some anti-Semites rail on how Israel is so evil and they have created all of this and they're occupiers and all. No. Because go back to Samuel, when Saul was king of Israel, when David was king of Israel in Jerusalem, all right, 2,600 years ago, they occupied their land that God gave them. Then there's been all kinds of wars, and now Israel's back, and Israel's got a tiny little sliver of land. Let them have their land, everyone. How are they to live at peace? We should always respect a nation's right to have their land. That is not the issue. There's plenty of land, okay? If Palestinians, they don't want to admit they're really from Jordan. We had that discussion with Pastor George Antonios, who was on. They're Jordanian, they're trans-Jordan. Oh, but they don't want to use that narrative. And, at first when they started calling them Palestinians, the Palestinians, people were upset about it. And there was one of the leaders, Arafat? Yeah, Arafat was angry about it and said, this is the Zionist way of calling us Palestinians. The Zionists are putting this on us. It's such we have the actual, clips of where, the articles of where this was said. We showed it on screen. And if any of you want to see that, I know we re-aired Pastor George Antonius. Just go to my Rumble channel, and it's right below. You'll see it on the description, and find out and stop repeating dogmatic rhetoric from people that don't know what they're talking about. People who have been listening to others who hate Israel. And they've got the fight of their lives on their hands. And if I lived in Israel, I would not want to be living where Hamas has, they're sworn enemies. They did it October 7th. They'll do it again. A lot's going on, and a lot of potential fulfillment of Bible prophecy as well. I don't know if you've been watching about the red heifers. So in the Bible, it basically says that sacrifices with perfect red heifers will be going on. The temple will be rebuilt, which could be that place where it's already there. It might not really need to be a rebuilding of the temple, because that could take a while, but there are plans to rebuild the temple. Like everything the Bible says happens is coming down. We potentially are much closer than we know. And by the way, if it ever shows up and JT's just running this screen because I've disappeared along with millions of people, I hope that you're with me, hun. I hope that if that ever happens.
You're with me, 'cause you may still be here.
Yeah, I might still be here, he said. He's gone. Yeah, the rapture happens, And the word rapture is not in the Bible, but there is definitely a moment where the Bible says that Jesus must return, because if he does not, there will be no one left. And it looks like this whole rise in war. But does that mean that we have to be upset about it? No, not for a second. I'm not. I'm having the time of my life. I don't want to be born in the boring years of, where nothing's happening. I want to see the fulfillment of prophecy. I would love to be here in the generation of the return of Jesus. I would love it. I would love it. That is so epic. And it doesn't mean that we're all, going to be, I don't know. I think that the biggest fear people have is, we're going to be imprisoned and, we're going to be killed and all of this. Well, for many things, how I look at it is whatever God's design is for my life, I'm going to live that to the best of my ability. And I do see in the Word that he says in the last days that the kingdom of God will be exalted above all the others. I think it's good news. I think he always exposes the dark side. I think he always deals his justice on the dark side. And I am banking on it because God is a God of justice. And Ezekiel 35:3-5 says that he will show up with a vengeance on our behalf. I expect God to show up with vengeance on our behalf. So I'm not going to be sitting around being worried. Am I going to have fun? You bet I am. I am going to watch Letitia James not be successful. I'm going to watch Biden not be successful, I pray. And if some people get into power through whatever God-forsaken means, that can happen. If all of that happens, I'm just going to watch how God fixes it because I've been around long enough. I'm older than I look, right? I've been around long enough now to see that God doesn't fix things when I want him to. He fixes things in the exact right moment to fulfill his purposes. And while I wait with expectancy that it is going to be absolutely fantastic. All right, so JT, Sky News Australia is having a good laugh at our Prime Minister's claims that climate change is part of democratic decline. Did you see this? Take a look.
But just very quickly, have a quick look at the laughable Justin Trudeau talking how climate change and democracy don't seem to work together. Have a listen.
We're all facing a series of challenges, new and old. We're still reeling from a pandemic that put immense pressure on our democracies. We're seeing growing distrust of government and media and increased polarization exacerbated by misinformation and disinformation. We're dealing with insecurity caused by armed conflicts and climate change. So today, I'm announcing that Canada is investing $8.4 million on research across the global south to better understand how climate change interacts with democratic decline.
That's too good. I mentioned a comedy show, how climate change, James, interacts with democratic decline. These people are completely bonkers.
Well, Rowan, it's the same thing. It's climate change, it's misinformation, it's disinformation, it's, propaganda, it's alt-right. All of these sort of things, they come up with these bogeymen that wind up having one result. We have to make sure that you have free speech to say the things that are approved. We have democracy to vote for the approved candidates. It's all about narrowing freedom, narrowing your choices, Rowan and Rita. That's where this is all going.
Well, that's the comedy hour. I tell you, Trudeau doesn't get any funnier than that bloke.
That it's so true, right? Like the lefties, it's all about, yes, we have to have the freedom to choose who we tell you to choose, the freedom to associate with those we tell you to associate with, the freedom to believe what we know is good for you, the freedom for us to keep you safe, trust us. Yes, no. The freedom to reject you. That's freedom. And we do reject you. So Canada's Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland doesn't think homes should be a financial asset.
more homes built faster, and we're also working hard to be sure
Thank you
that
very
homes
much.
are not a financial asset.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Minister.
For making clear that the
We are
Conservative Party
advocating-
doesn't actually care about whether homes are for Canadians to live in. Does the Conservative Party not care if there are vacant
Thank you,
properties
Minister.
across the
We're
country
actually
while
advocating
people
for some
need
common
homes?
sense, and it
I
doesn't
guess
sound
you're
like a very
advocating
good
for
deal for
not
taxpayers.
caring for people
But
to be housed.
let's move on, shall we? Let's move on.
I can see why you would want to.
Miss
Yes.
Chrystia Freeland, you can't see how she shakes all the time. What is that? Have you ever seen her standing behind the Prime Minister and she's got these odd tics and she's like, doing all kinds of stuff? I mean, I don't know what that is, but like some sort of, some maybe spiritual help somewhere might be good for her. But so homes not being shouldn't be an asset. That's pretty much what most of Canada works for their whole lives, to have the family home so that you've got some security for generations to come and you can build equity, What is she thinking really there? Like so out of touch, right there, so out of touch with Canadians and human beings. Even biblically speaking, when we stand up for land, it's because it brings security, and your house is your castle. It's your place of peace. It's your place where you have your family and you're able to enjoy that. And definitely, people want to be able to purchase it. And that's what the younger generation's pretty upset about right now, is that how do you even begin to purchase one of these homes? The first condo that I got, it was $56,000. I would dare to say it's probably worth $600,000 today in Burnaby. It was old then. I think it was already 30 years old back when I was young, really young. And because I'm just sort of young now. But it was $3,500 that we had to put on a down payment for that. And we borrowed that from my parents. $3,500, paid it back, when we sold. We sold like sort of doubled within a few years. We sold it at double what it was. And that began the way to accumulate some sort of financial security. So real estate, and Proverbs 31 says, I really felt like I loved real estate. To this day, I like looking at, maybe I should have been a realtor, but that wasn't really God's call on my life. But as a person, it's interesting that Proverbs 31 describes women and talks about, that they buy and sell land. I love that. And I liked, and frankly, I made a few little boo-boo adjustments. And one was when my husband was not in agreement with me to get a second property for income, and he wasn't in agreement with me. And I went ahead, and I really realized, like, from then on, it was like, well, I just said, oh no, let's do it. I just kind of, in my way of like, I think it'll be all right. And he was sweet and kind, because he always is. He's, very, really easy to get along with, except sometimes, those times you're difficult, very difficult, in fact, but, hard to handle. But mostly JT and I would be in agreement with things. But on this one, I really pushed it forward, even though he wasn't in agreement. And I learned such a valuable lesson. It was a complete dog. It never worked out well. So our choices right now, JT, are if we let YouTube go in order to play a clip that we have that we think that you... Oh, we still have one. Yes, CTV story on how woke teachers are now complaining that they are being targeted for being woke. Oh, interesting.
A Surrey teacher is speaking out over repeated harassment she's facing online. The harassment is targeted at educators and is only getting worse, according to groups that specialize in studying the far right. CTV's Isabella Zaffarisi has more.
that are coming.
These are the posters and flags teacher Annie Ohana has hanging in her classroom. They're an important part of her curriculum.
And the goal is to actually have them think about it.
They're also part of the reason why Ohana was targeted online by Chanel Fall, a former high school teacher who says she now exposes wokeism in Canadian schools. Fall posted a photo on social media of Ohana's classroom, saying she's influencing kids to adopt her personal political beliefs and needs to be fired.
I was very disappointed because they seem to be making a lot of assumptions that just simply were based on complete misinformation, lies, and in fact puts myself and other teachers and students in my community in danger.
CTV News reached out to Fall, who doubled down, saying any reasonable person who looks through her thousands of posts on X will see that she's indoctrinating kids with radical woke ideology.
We're not indoctrinating anybody. What we're doing is building really strong, empowered citizens that can speak up for themselves.
This isn't the first time this has happened, but it is the first time Ohana has spoken publicly about it.
I think really the call out was to make sure that other teachers knew it's okay to ask for help, that you don't have to suffer in silence.
According to the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, harassing educators is on the rise, stemming from opposition to sexual orientation and gender identity education.
What we're seeing is an increase in attacks on teachers themselves through harassment campaigns, emails, social media attacks, and it's potentially very dangerous.
I'm thinking of the teachers that can't be in front of you right now, that are so scared, that are going on long-term stress leaves, right? This is absolutely having an impact.
You know what we're scared of? We're scared when you're telling our kids that they can change their gender and you're confusing them. We've been afraid too. We don't believe it. We don't want it. We don't buy it. It's anti-scientific. It's you want to tear down the main family nucleus of a mom and a dad and a family, and that scares us. And yes, people are upset about it. I wouldn't call it hate. I just think that they think that you're ignorant in your beliefs and that you shouldn't be telling their children, not your children, you shouldn't be telling their children your moral values and how you see things. Because we don't go around telling your kids about Jesus. We don't. It's a respectful thing. Jesus never begged or forced anyone to follow him. You might be given an opportunity, but you don't indoctrinate and take little vulnerable kids in your classroom and tell them about all your ways of thinking, because we don't buy it. We're not for the spectrum people. We don't like your little pony or what was it called? It was the, you know, that thing with the unicorn. Yeah, the unicorn thing and the Care Bear gender, fluid big posters that y'all have, so that you can sit in front of vulnerable little tiny kids and tell them that how God made them was wrong. They're in the wrong body. You are bringing down their self-esteem. You are bringing down their identity. You are ruining who they are by telling them this. And you think that we're hateful because we're telling you to stop it, knock it off. Don't speak to our kids about this stuff. And you think that we're hateful. No. It is hateful to tell our children that they are not perfect, just the way they are, that God made them correctly in the right bodies. And now what do we have? Oh, now we have a whole bunch of kids, especially kids with other mental health issues. Autistic kids are struggling because they latch onto this and they think that maybe that will be super cool to be the opposite gender. And now an epidemic, really, a mass hysteria of kids being confused about who they are. This wasn't the case years and years ago. We accepted that if we had a penis, we're a boy, and if we have breasts, we're a girl, and that's how it is. We didn't confuse people to the point where they want to have these massive operations that harm people. It's harmful and it's mean. It's mean to tell somebody that they're not enough just the way they are. So my website, let's do the other thing tomorrow. We'll just close off. Should we do that? Is that okay? Or do you think it's, yeah, you're okay? Because then we don't have to get off this platform. Otherwise, we have to leave YouTube, and we don't want to. We really like YouTube, and we're grateful to you for tuning in. We like X, we like Facebook, and we're grateful to you that you're tuning in. My website is Laura-Lynn.tv. Thank you very much if you are able to help us to get this kind of content out. You won't see this on CBC, CTV, or Global because somebody's telling those hosts and those news anchors what to say. And the only person that gets to tell me what to say is God and JT. And they're pretty good with what I'm saying. So I get to speak out loud, tell you the truth, fight hard, and this is how we do it, with your support. So if you are able to go to the website, there's a donate button there. And for anyone that could donate $20 a month or more, become a regular monthly partner. We've already had our first group of books go out. It's so exciting. And if you're able to help us, it means a lot because this is how we survive, telling the truth in a world that does not want us to speak the truth. So we ask you also that you are able to donate anonymously if you go to the website. You're able to donate one time. You can also donate one time or, every few months if you'd like to. You can go to the donate button or you could just send an e-transfer to Laura-Lynn Live at protonmail.com, Laura-Lynn Live at protonmail.com. Or you can go to, you can send a snail mail to Box 48184, Queensborough, New Westminster, BC, V3M0, British Columbia, BC, BC, Canada, V3M0A7. It looks perfect. Thank you so much, hon. And we just appreciate you very much. I want to let you know also that we encourage you, if you have monetary questions, we encourage you to invest in gold and silver. Get to know someone that you trust. We trust Steve Merrill from Sun City Silver and Gold. If you're making decisions about what you should do, we've now had a really good relationship with him. We believe that the way that our countries are operating is dangerous for our money because you can't keep printing money and pouring millions and billions of dollars into all kinds of stuff when we are trillions of dollars in debt. It's like we have an unending credit card. Sooner or later, they call the debt in. You don't want to be stuck with something that's literally printed money. You want gold, silver, certain investments that will be real. We highly recommend speaking to Steve Merrill. It's important. Sovereignize at protonmail.com. Okay. So in Deuteronomy 7, the Lord was, he was driving out the nations from within the borders of Israel that he had put borders of land. And he says this in verse 7. He said, the Lord did not set his affection on you and choose you because you were more numerous than other peoples, for you were the fewest of all peoples. Isn't that interesting? God's not always about choosing the most, the greatest, the smartest. He's about choosing those that love him. And the same principles that applied to God's first chosen people, and now being all of us God's chosen people. I'm chosen by him, and so are you. We are the chosen people, a new generation. We are a royal priesthood because we put our hope and trust in the name of the Lord. So God goes on to say this to them, but it was because the Lord loved you and kept the oath he swore to your ancestors, that he brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the land of slavery, and that was in Egypt, in Pharaoh's Egypt. From the power of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Know therefore that the Lord your God is God. He is a faithful God, keeping his covenant of love to 1,000 generations of those who love him and keep his commandments. And before I go on, I just want to say that that's so comforting to me, that God's commandments he will keep. When he says that he will be with you in the darkest valley, in the valley of the shadow of death, that we do not need to fear any evil, that is what keeps my mind in perfect peace. That God will preserve me, that the word says he has hemmed us in before and behind, that we are guarded, that he has encircled us with a wall of strength, a shield of protection, that he is the great warrior who fights for us, that we do not need to fight this battle, that God will fight for us. I sometimes get asked about protests and things that are going on, and I go, well, I have protested. I do believe in it, but I also believe in something else. That when God says it is time, it shall be time for that trial to end, for that injustice to end. When he says it's time, because this is God's character. Listen to this. But those who hate him, he will repay to their face by destruction. He will not be slow to repay to their face those who hate him. There's a whole lot of people who hate God. I think it's the craziest thing you could ever do, to hate the one who's all-powerful, to hold anger against him, because he is perfect and he is loving and he is worthy of our utmost adoration. I will not be among the haters, and I hope that you won't either. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow. You know, it's not easy to deliver the truth of what our sick world is doing, but for some of us, we feel that we have no choice. Because if we are silent about these abominable things, then we are letting evil go unchecked, and we cannot do that. For those of you wonderful people who are writing me and are sharing your encouragement, I am deeply grateful. Thank you for all the letters that you've been sending. Thank you for the donations and the support. I found out that in order to speak the truth, you have to become very, very strong. If you would go to my website at www.laura-lynn.tv, you'll find all of the ways that you can contact me. Remember, my friends, all is well. All is well. Thanks for joining me.